The profound grief experienced by many after losing loved ones is a poignant reflection of the human condition. Even the anticipation of such loss can evoke deep anxiety within us. However, the Stoics recognize that the fear of loss and the agonizing pain of grief often stem from irrational thought patterns. This video delves into Stoic philosophy, examining its insights on attachment, the loss of loved ones, and navigating the inevitable separations that life presents. The Stoics, renowned for their emphasis on reason and virtue, observed that the fear of loss and the agonizing distress of grief often stem from irrational thinking. This video delves into Stoic philosophy, examining its insights on attachment, the loss of loved ones, and how to navigate the inevitable separations that life presents. Fear of loss. Strong emotional attachment to other people is deeply ingrained within the human experience, celebrated and normalized throughout societies. This is likely rooted in our biology, as humans are inherently social beings, wired for connection and belonging. The intensity of these attachments, however, varies significantly, ranging from fleeting fondness and casual attraction to deeply ingrained, almost obsessive dependencies. When we become deeply attached to someone, we often yearn for their constant presence, experiencing a profound sense of unease when they are absent. Conversely, when they are with us, the fear of separation can cast a long shadow, creating anxiety and a constant undercurrent of dread. This emotional dependence, however, can lead to significant psychological and emotional distress. By placing our happiness and fulfillment entirely upon the presence or absence of another person, we relinquish control over our own well-being. We effectively surrender our happiness to the whims of fate, allowing external circumstances to dictate our emotional state. The fear of losing those we cherish can become all-consuming, leading us to engage in desperate attempts to maintain control over their presence, often inadvertently pushing them away or creating resentment within the relationship. Furthermore, this desperate clinging to others often reflects a deeply ingrained selfishness. When we yearn for another person's constant presence, we are primarily motivated by our own desires, our own need for comfort and companionship, rather than by a genuine concern for their well-being or their own personal growth. This self-centered approach can strain relationships, hindering the natural flow of life and preventing both individuals from fully experiencing their own unique journeys. The selfish nature of attachment. At its core, the persistent effort to maintain the presence of loved ones in our lives often reveals an underlying selfishness. When we fervently desire someone to remain by our side, this desire rarely stems from a genuine concern for their well-being or their own personal growth. Instead, it primarily serves to fulfill our own selfish needs, our inherent aversion to separation, and our deep-seated fear of loneliness. This self-centered perspective can subtly distort our judgment and lead us to make decisions that are neither wise nor truly beneficial. Driven by our own desires, we may prioritize our own emotional needs over the genuine happiness and well-being of those we claim to cherish. We may inadvertently exert undue pressure, impose our own expectations, or even manipulate situations in an attempt to maintain the status quo, ultimately jeopardizing the very relationships we seek to preserve. The profound pain of loss, the grief experienced after the death of a friend, the heartbreak of a departed spouse, the devastating estrangement from a child, often reflects this deep-seated sense of ownership. We experience such losses not merely as unfortunate events, but as a personal violation, as if something that rightfully belongs to us has been unjustly taken away. This sense of entitlement, this belief that we have a claim on the continued presence and affection of others, can significantly hinder our ability to cope with loss and move forward in a healthy manner. Loss and separation. The separation from those we care for is often accompanied by a profound sense of loss, a feeling that we have irrevocably lost something precious. However, from a Stoic perspective, this interpretation fundamentally misrepresents the nature of human relationships. The Stoics did not view such separations as losses, but rather as temporary returns, acknowledging that true possession of another person is an illusion. As Epictetus eloquently stated, "Never say of anything, 'I have lost it,' but 'I have returned it.' Is your child dead? it is returned. Is your wife dead? She is returned. This powerful dictum highlights a core Stoic principle, recognizing that external factors, such as our children, spouses, and possessions, ultimately lie beyond our control and therefore cannot truly be ours in the absolute sense. True possession, according to the Stoics, implies ownership and dominion. However, we do not possess other human beings. We share moments, experiences, and affections with them. Our relationships are not static entities, but dynamic, ever-evolving connections that are constantly subject to the ebb and flow of life. Birth, growth, change, and ultimately, separation are inherent aspects of these relationships, just as they are inherent aspects of all natural phenomena. To view these separations as losses is to fundamentally misunderstand their nature. It is to cling to an illusion of permanence, to resist the natural course of life, and to ultimately suffer unnecessary pain and distress. By embracing the Stoic perspective, we can learn to view these separations not as losses, but as natural occurrences, as temporary returns, and as opportunities for personal growth and spiritual development. We can cultivate a deeper appreciation for the time we have shared with others, cherish the memories we have created, and ultimately find peace and acceptance in the face of inevitable change. The Stoic perspective. When it comes to our relationships with others, most of us likely occupy a complex and nuanced space. While the blatant ownership of human beings, as was commonplace in Epictetus's time, is thankfully a relic of the past, subtle forms of possessiveness still permeate our interactions. Although we no longer explicitly view our employees, family members, or friends as possessions, we often harbor a subtle sense of entitlement to their presence and attention. We expect our friends to be available at our convenience, our employees to prioritize our needs, and our spouses to conform to our expectations. This inherent sense of entitlement stems from a deep-seated belief that these individuals somehow belong to us, that their presence in our lives is a given, and that they are obligated to fulfill our desires. This perceived ownership, however, is ultimately an illusion. True ownership implies absolute control, the ability to dictate the actions and destinies of others. Yet we have no such control over the people in our lives. They possess their own free will, their own desires, and their own paths to pursue. To believe otherwise is to deny their inherent autonomy and to impose our own will upon them, often leading to resentment, conflict, and ultimately, the very separation we fear. From a Stoic perspective, this illusion of ownership is fundamentally at odds with reality. True possession, according to the Stoics, implies absolute control and unchanging permanence. Yet external things, including our relationships with others, are constantly in flux. They are subject to the inevitable forces of change, growth, and decay. To cling to the belief that we possess others is to resist the natural flow of life, to embrace an illusion that can only lead to disappointment and suffering. By recognizing the limitations of our control, we can cultivate a more healthy and fulfilling approach to our relationships. We can learn to appreciate the unique individuals we share our lives with, to respect their autonomy, and to cherish the moments we spend together, understanding that these connections are precious gifts, not entitlements. In doing so, we can cultivate a deeper sense of gratitude and acceptance, allowing us to navigate the inevitable challenges of life with greater grace and resilience. Recognizing the limitations of human control, Epictetus asserted that all external possessions are subject to the revolution of the universe, a force beyond our reach unless we were to wield the power of a god. The Stoic critique of romantic passion. Romantic love, often characterized by its passionate intensity, occupies a central place in contemporary society. We frequently describe romantic love as passionate, acknowledging its capacity to evoke profound and often volatile emotions. This intense emotional engagement is not merely tolerated, but often celebrated, with being in love frequently regarded as one of the most fulfilling and desirable human experiences. However, this emphasis on passionate romantic love stands in stark contrast to the Stoic perspective. The Stoics viewed the passions, those intense, often overwhelming emotions like anger, fear, and desire, as fundamentally problematic. When we are deeply attached to another person, Our emotional state becomes inextricably linked to their presence or absence. The joy of their company is inevitably followed by the anxiety of separation and the potential for devastating grief. The Stoics argued that these intense emotional fluctuations stem from irrational judgments about the external world. For instance, there is nothing inherently good about another person's presence, nor is there anything inherently bad about their absence or loss. From a Stoic perspective, these events are simply neutral occurrences, part of the natural order of things. However, when we irrationally label these events as good or bad, we trigger a cascade of emotions, desire, fear, grief, that disrupt our inner peace and hinder our ability to live virtuously. These passions, the Stoics argued, arise from a fundamental misalignment between our judgments and the reality of the situation. Therefore, the Stoics sought to eliminate the passions, not by suppressing emotions entirely, but by addressing the underlying irrational judgments that give rise to them. Through reason and self-reflection, they aim to cultivate a more objective and detached perspective, allowing individuals to navigate the challenges of love and loss with greater equanimity and resilience. Epictetus, the renowned Stoic philosopher, offered a practical approach to cultivating detachment from external possessions and relationships. He advised his followers to begin with the most insignificant and easily replaceable items. Begin with the most trifling things, the ones most exposed to injury, like a pot or a cup, and then advance to a tunic, a paltry dog, a mere horse, a bit of land. This gradual process of detachment, starting with the trivial and gradually progressing towards more significant attachments, aim to desensitize individuals to the pain of loss and cultivate a sense of equanimity. He further emphasized the importance of examining one's own judgments. Look about on every side and cast these things away from you. Purify your judgments for fear lest something of what is not your own may be fastened to them or grown together with them and may give you pain when it is torn loose. Epictetus recognized that our emotional distress often stems from our own judgments, from clinging to the illusion of ownership and control over external things, including our relationships with others. By cultivating a more objective and detached perspective, we can minimize the emotional impact of loss and learn to accept the inevitable changes that life presents. According to Stoicism, with consistent practice and diligent cultivation of the right mindset, it is indeed possible to let go of strong attachments to other people and to bear the inevitable separations that life presents with greater equanimity. This does not imply emotional coldness or indifference, but rather a deeper understanding of the nature of human existence, an acceptance of the impermanence of all things, and a focus on cultivating inner peace and virtue. By detaching ourselves from the illusion of ownership and embracing the fluidity of human relationships, we can navigate the challenges of life with greater resilience and find solace in the enduring values of virtue and wisdom. Challenge of loss. A common misconception about Stoicism is that it demands a complete suppression of emotions, particularly in the face of loss. This is a significant misinterpretation. While cultivating equanimity, a state of inner peace and tranquility, is a central goal of Stoic philosophy, it does not imply emotional numbness or the eradication of all feelings. Maintaining equanimity after the loss of a loved one is undoubtedly one of the most challenging tests of human resilience. Even for the most dedicated Stoics, such as Epictetus, Chrysippus, and Seneca, achieving complete emotional mastery was likely an ongoing process, a lifelong pursuit rather than a static endpoint. The Stoics acknowledged the existence of proto-emotions, involuntary physiological and psychological responses that arise automatically in response to external stimuli. These include the initial jolt of fear when encountering danger, the instinctive flinch of the body, or the involuntary tearing up upon hearing of a tragedy. These proto-emotions are not considered irrational. They are natural, instinctive reactions that are beyond our immediate control. The Stoic focus lies not on suppressing these initial, involuntary responses, but on preventing them from escalating into full-blown passions, intense, disruptive emotions such as anger, grief, or despair. These passions, the Stoics argued, arise not from the external event itself, but from our own irrational judgments about that event. For example, the loss of a loved one is undeniably a significant event, but it is neither inherently good nor inherently bad. It is simply a fact of life, a part of the natural order of things. However, when we irrationally judge this loss as a personal tragedy, as an unjust deprivation, we unleash a cascade of negative emotions that can consume us. One of Seneca's letters offers a poignant perspective on navigating the grief of loss. He emphasizes the importance of accepting the natural course of events, acknowledging the impermanence of all things, and finding solace in the memories and the enduring impact of the deceased on our lives. He encourages us to cultivate gratitude for the time we shared with our loved ones and to focus on living a virtuous life in their honor. In conclusion, Stoicism does not advocate for emotional suppression. Instead, it provides a framework for understanding and navigating the emotional landscape, for distinguishing between involuntary proto-emotions and the destructive passions that arise from irrational judgments. By cultivating a more objective and accepting perspective, we can learn to navigate the challenges of loss with greater resilience, finding solace in the enduring values of virtue, wisdom, and human connection. In 41 AD, the Roman Emperor Claudius, under the influence of his ambitious wife Messalina, exiled the renowned philosopher Seneca to the island of Corsica. Accused of adultery, a charge that many historians now consider dubious, Seneca faced the grim prospect of execution before his sentence was commuted. During his 8 years of exile, Seneca wrote a series of letters to his mother, Helvia, offering solace and guidance as she grappled with her son's misfortune. One of Seneca's most poignant letters addresses the issue of grief. Recognizing the profound emotional impact of his exile on his mother, Seneca cautioned against unrestrained mourning. He observed that ancient Roman customs, while allowing for mourning periods, also placed limits on excessive grief. They did not forbid them to mourn, he wrote, but they set limits to their grief. For while it is a foolish weakness to give way to endless grief when you lose one of those dearest to you, yet it shows an unnatural hardness of heart to express no grief at all. The best middle course between affection and hard common sense is both to feel regret and to restrain it. Seneca's perspective on grief diverges somewhat from the ideal of complete emotional detachment often associated with Stoicism, as exemplified by the philosophy of Epictetus. While Epictetus emphasized the importance of cultivating equanimity and minimizing the impact of external events on our inner peace, he acknowledged that complete emotional indifference to the loss of loved ones is neither realistic nor desirable. Seneca, recognizing the inherent limitations of human nature, offered a more nuanced approach. He acknowledged the inevitability of grief while emphasizing the importance of moderation and self-control. He encouraged his mother to navigate her grief consciously, to find a balance between honoring her emotional response to the loss and preventing it from consuming her entirely. Furthermore, Seneca recognized the crucial role of philosophy in cultivating emotional resilience. He urged his mother to engage with philosophical texts, to apply Stoic principles to her daily life, and to cultivate inner strength through contemplation and reflection. By cultivating a deeper understanding of human nature and the impermanence of all things, he believed individuals could learn to navigate the challenges of life, including the inevitable pain of loss, with greater grace and acceptance. The experience of loss is an inherent part of the human condition, a poignant reminder of our mortality and the fleeting nature of our time on earth. By exploring Stoic philosophy, we can gain valuable insights into managing our attachments, cultivating inner peace, and finding meaning and purpose even in the face of loss.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.